Hey guys, what's up and welcome back. Today we're going to dive back into our level 100 Whirlwind Barbarian, and we're going to do another round of Nightmare Dungeons. So last time we did the tier 100 for the first time, and then now going forward we want to just do basically like the last tier of dungeon only, right? So it doesn't always have to be 100, but as long as it's in this 91 to 100, it's sort of functionally the same. And then we're basically just prioritizing sigils that are like, like 96 plus, right? So to that end, we weren't really happy with our clear speed in the level 100. Our skill tree wasn't exactly perfect. We didn't have any sources of healing. We had taken out of the shout healing skill for some reason, raid leader, so we put back into that. And we basically just adjusted our skill points a little bit. And what we did is we took out the wallop concussion synergy. And then what Max Roll would recommend is replacing that with defensive stance and slaying strike. I don't really like slaying strike. I don't like effects against injured or healthy. So I just put more points back into the shouts to the extended duration, the healing, and the damage reduction. And we took 1 point out of Battle Fervor, which makes it so that charge only gives berserking for 2 seconds rather than 3. But I think the shout synergy is a little more important. So we were able to do this because we dropped the uber unique Doombringer, right? So Doombringer, which we dropped from Duriel, has this very sneaky max life percent, right? So if I look at my previous setup, it would have been, let's see, it would have been this mace, this glove, and a tusk helm. So previously we were running it like this with the one-handed mace, the tusk helm, and then Relentless Berserker on gloves. So it was tusk helm, Juggernaut, Relentless Berserker on gloves, and then obviously Tybalt's Will, Ghostwalker, and then all the usual stuff. Limitless Rage, Dire Whirlwind, Ramaladinis, Edge Masters, and then the Jewelry, Numbing Wrath, Echoing Fury, and Bold Chieftains. That's all basically the same. And then you can see our life is at 19k right here, right? So then the decision point is, all right, if we put on Doombringer, we lose Dire Whirlwind. So now where can Dire Whirlwind go? Well, we don't want to, and look at the life difference too, right? So we go from 19k, we add Doombringer, now we're at 27k, right? So that one piece of equipment adds a ton of life, and you have to think about our life as not just max life, but fortify as well. So it's not just the effective, like, 8k or so life. It's really that doubled because of Numbing Wrath. So it's an extra 16,000 life, essentially. It takes us from 40,000 effective to like 55,000 effective life, right? Okay, so what we lose is we lose Dire Whirlwind. So, okay, so where could Dire Whirlwind go? Well, we can move it to the glove. All right, so now we got Dire Whirlwind on the glove. It's not a max roll of 24%, it's only 21%, but whatever. So now we've lost Relentless Berserker, and Relentless Berserker is an important source of sustain for the berserking effect, which all of our damage is done while we're berserking, right? It's kind of like how Vulnerable used to be, where all your damage was done during the Vulnerable window. Well, now all of our damage is done during the berserking window. So Relentless Berserker, which is a utility aspect, we can either put that on helm, chest, boots, glove, or amulet, right? So the choice is, okay, you can either go on the boots, or we can drop the tusk helm and put on a helm with Relentless Berserkers. And then what's nice about this is we've got a new helm that's got the stats that we want. So this one has Max Life, Max Fury, CDR, which we're always going to take on Helmet. And then the optional roll is either Damage while Berserking or Total Armor. So since we're at the armor cap, we don't need Total Armor, so we can put Damage while Berserking on this. And it doesn't really change the damage too much between Tusk Helm and this helm. We're losing the bonuses when enraged. So that kind of sucks, but it's a trade-off to putting on Doombringer, and also it gives us an extra source of max life, which takes our max life all the way up to 29,000, and then effectively with Fortify, it's 60,000 total life, right? So this is the swap set out. So we're at almost 30k life, and then if we swap everything back, we're at 20k life. So we go from 20k, 40k to 30k, 60k, and it does make a noticeable difference in terms of our ability to just roll through the mobs, right? Which is the playstyle that we want to be doing. Okay, and then we're going to try and get Gore's Wraps into the mix too, because I think nobody's been using Gore's Wraps since the update, but this giving 6 ranks of Whirlwind and then emphasizing Lucky Hit Chance. It's too bad that that's a low roll of Lucky Hit Chance, but if I think about how Gore's Wraps is doing a local explosion, and then how Doombringer's Lucky Hit Chance is also doing a local explosion, I might want to put Dire Whirlwind on a ring instead of Bold Chieftains, and then throw Gore's Wraps in here as well, right? So that's something that we're going to try as well. Now let's jump into some Nightmare Dungeons. We got a 96, 99s, and 100. Let's see. Okay, so we'll do this one. We'll do it with a Lightning Elixir. And we'll just set some rules for ourselves. So basically what we'll do is these 96 plus Nightmare Dungeons are basically filling my bag twice. So we'll only come back to town one time in the middle of the dungeon, and then again at the end. So we'll try and limit the amount of times that we town portal. But this setup with Doombringer lets us do the events and stuff. It basically lets us play the way we want, which is we want to just be in the mix with the mobs the whole time. And then that last dungeon we did was a 3-part dungeon, so hopefully this is just like a regular 2-parter. But yeah, basically we just don't want to be shying away from the monsters. We don't want to have to run away and reposition, we just want to be like in the fight. Okay, so here's an example of our first event. This is a cooldown reduction shrine, so we're going to have lots of shout activation. The shouts give us healing. Here's some elites. And that's generally what we like. We like clicking on all the stuff. We like doing all the little side events. We like how Whirlwind makes it easy on us in general. A little bit of rubber banding there for a second. So the question is it good design if Whirlwind needs a Uber Unique to be enabled? I would say the Uber Uniques didn't functionally exist in the game for normies until Season 2 and the addition of Duriel. But in general, I like the difficulty kind of scaled to a level like this where it's more interesting fighting these guys. Like, I get rewarded if I do stuff like that, where I use charge effectively and knock things into the wall. And the weakness of this version of the game is always going to be the stash management and the way that aspects our inventory items. I've retooled my stash, added more mules, and basically have it so I'm ready to respec into Hammer of the Ancients. The good thing about the Hoda build is because this build that I have for Whirlwind uses Ramaldini's Magnum Opus to scale off of Fury. Hoda also scales off of Max Fury, so all 5 armor pieces are going to be the same. And then the two-handed weapons are both going to be the same. So I only need to change out my jewelry and my one-handers. And then the good news is 2 out of 3 pieces of the jewelries are unique, so I don't even have to worry about respecking the existing rings and amulet that I have. So it should be pretty easy to swap into Hoda, and then we can try and swap into Deathblow Upheaval as well. But we'll go Hoda first, because it's very similar to what we're currently doing. Here's another event. And we'll just fill our bag one time until we hit the midpoint. Just use potions until the shouts come back up. I'm maxed on obols. I definitely don't mind the Nightmare Dungeons in small doses. It's just there's nothing to do in the game other than Nightmare Dungeons and then open world farming for boss materials. That was another good stun into the corner. Realistically, I like this build because the open world farm isn't so bad with it. Don't stand in the fire. Kill that elite. Alright, so our bag's almost full, so when we hit the midpoint room here, we'll town portal. Alright, our Supreme Wrath of the Berserker is maxed out. It should say snapshotted as long as we keep on keeping our Berserk meter up. And then just don't stand in the shit. Kind of get everyone corralled. Knock them into the corner. Back out of the corner. We can try that again. Corral everybody. Okay, so let's town portal from here. We'll empty our bag. So I think clear speed is going to be relative to whether you're picking the stuff up or not, right? Because what you're getting out of these high-tier nightmare dungeons is all the yellows. Like, we've got a single arms master. Are we even tracking arms master? I've got a spreadsheet on the other side where I'm looking at my aspects that I'm keeping track of. All arms we don't care about. We've got a ton of 925 swords at this point. We're always looking for good maces. For pants, we want max life triple DR. For boots, we either want triple resistance or utility boots with double movement speed. And then amulets are basically impossible to find. No deaths yet. Alright, let's hop back in. Okay, hopefully we can close this one out faster. Should just be 2 objectives. The last dungeon we recorded was 3 objectives, which takes a lot longer, obviously. Yeah, because the boss is going to be behind this door, so you just have to slay 2 vampire lords. Okay, here's one of them. Stun him. So we've got Wallop on the amulet now. We want counteroffensive, but we took Wallop when we saw it, just in case. And we don't have the one-handed mace equipped right now because we have the Doombringer. But we can still get stuns using charge, like that. So if we hit them into the wall, we stun them. So it's not like Wallop is wasted, but we'd rather have counteroffensive. But in tight corners like this, smacking things into the wall is excellent. Charge is a fantastic skill, and it's obvious why basically everyone's using it. With Ancestral Charge, the one that gives the 4 Ancients when you're charging, makes the AoE huge. We just don't really have room to fit it. We could potentially put it on the gloves in the one-handed mace setup. Okay, here's the other mini-boss. Okay, let's see if we can set up a stun on these guys. Okay. Alright, now we'd still be dead if we ran into the butcher, but always check the healing well in case it's one of those event shrines or whatever. The cursed healing well. Alright, so against Blood Bishop we want to keep our unstoppable sources up, because he has a move where he does a grab and life drain, and you can break out of that with unstoppable. Alright, gotta be careful with him because he does a lot of shadow damage and fire damage effects. You gotta kind of stay behind him. Again, this is what we like about the higher tier dungeons, is the boss fights are a little more interesting. Like all those shadow projectiles, we knew to dodge those. We would normally never even pay attention to that kind of stuff. And then you get tons and tons of glyph experience from these higher ones too. So we're just going to take every glyph that we have to 15. And then start taking the good ones to 21. But look at that, we got Cleaver all the way up to 9. So ideally you want like 10 minutes or less per dungeon, and that'll be more indicative of what a pit run is like. But the difference is, a pit's like a greater rift in that all you need to do is kill the monsters. You don't have to pick up loot and sort through your bag or anything. All of the loot's gonna drop at the end. So, yeah. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the updated gameplay with Doombringer. Doombringer gives us tons of sustain at the cost of a little bit of damage. Our average numbers go from like 300, 400, 500k with the one-handed mace setup to closer to like 200, 300, 400k. So we lose like 100k of damage on average. I feel like the Whirlwind build is kind of correctly scaled for the content, right? And that the other builds are kind of either like over-tuned or whatever. I feel like the game designers probably keep a close eye on how Whirlwind performs and uses that as kind of like the reference point for how they want difficulty to feel, which is why I like the build, and I also like Whirlwind for open world farming, because the only activities in this game other than doing the nightmare dungeons is you have to farm all of this open world content for boss material, right? So each of the zones, each of the 5 zones has... Each of the 5 regions has one zone with the whispers in it right now, right? Like the bounty system. So basically, the only other thing I could do other than these nightmare dungeons is go around, go into the Helltide, collect the living steel from the Helltide. While you're in there, if you can double dip and do the whispers while you're in there, that's great. But really, you're just doing Helltide, whispers, and then you're waiting for Legion event and world boss events to pop up. And like I had said before, the worst material to farm by a mile is the Exquisite Blood, because the Exquisite Blood only drops from Legion events and world boss events, which are like strict timed events. The next most annoying material is Living Steel, just because there's a rate limit to which you can collect this, right? So every hour there's one Helltide, and then 4 out of 5 of the regions you can collect 2 chests of the Tortured Gift of Living Steels, and then when it's in the Kyrgyzstan region, you can get 3 of those. But like the other chests, the Tortured Gift of Mysteries, for example, it might give you like 1 living steel. It's not worth it. So you go into Helltide just to open the Tortured Gift of Living Steel. So it's basically 2 chests an hour, which is 2 runs that you can get. And then the bounties are just rotating. So it's basically impossible to run out of bounties to do, because by the time you clear all 5 zones on the map, the zones are basically rotating and refreshing. Like you clear all these whispers here, you go around the map, do all of them. By the time you're done and ready to recycle, the whispers will have moved. Now they're in this zone here, or they're in this zone here, and then a fresh Helltide is popping up. So yeah, I mean, there's really, and even in the new version of the game in Season 4, when they add the pit is basically just kind of like instance dungeons again, right? And if anything, they're probably a little less interesting than the Nightmare dungeons, in a sense, where there's no objectives or anything. You're just going in there and killing the monsters as fast as possible. It's probably even less interesting than the seasonal gauntlet, actually, but what it gives you is a hamster wheel for gathering mats and improving your gear. But yeah, in this version of the game, it's just the Nightmare dungeons, and it's the open world farming for boss materials. And we'll do, we'll try and wrap this out with kind of like one gigantic video where we farm everything. And then maybe what we'll do after that is take all the materials that we've gathered and then switch into a boss build, which is Hoda, and try and set up like boss killing one-shot overpowers, right? So we can do a big world farm, gather up a ton of materials, and then switch into Hoda, spend all those materials, and see how fast we can kill bosses. And that's basically how we'll wrap things up before Season 4 comes out. And honestly, we might not even play Season 4. We'll probably just take a pretty big break and wait for the expansion. Because if I think about how this game has gone, this version of the game is like close to being good, but it's incomplete, right? And one of the biggest problems is the aspect system, which gets fixed by the codex. But then when they do tempering, they're probably going to have to do another round of like nerfs and adjustments and things like that. Like, we're not totally confident that they have all of the numbers and kind of like build balance correct, right, for everything. But to get ready for switching into Hoda, this is what we did. We organized our stash. We added more mules. We've got weapons, armor, jewelry, uniques, and other stuff that we're swapping into. And then 2 tabs of aspects. And then we're keeping track of aspects on a spreadsheet, basically. So like which ones we need for either the Hoda build or the Kratos build, Deathblow Upheaval. And we're just tracking, okay, do we have them in our inventory or not? And basically the new system is going to become something that looks like a spreadsheet, right? So right now it's all inventory items with icons that require hover over, right? Or you search. So like if I want my Relentless Berserkers, there they are. I've got my 2 Relentless Berserkers, but like the new system, when they go into just inventory mode, is going to be much better. And then it becomes pretty clear how it's similar to what Last Epoch was doing, where Last Epoch was giving you a way to put affixes into an inventory list and then attach them back onto items later. This becomes something very similar, where you basically break down a legendary, and then the legendary aspect goes into an inventory list that you can later reuse. The difference is in Last Epoch, it's consumable, so if you only had 2 Relentless Berserkers and you use them, they'd be gone. What they're doing here in Diablo is they're just going to make it cost material. So yeah, the game is going to be a lot easier in terms of trying different builds, which is basically the way we like to play. We like to have speed farming Whirlwind build, and then we would want a boss killing build. And right now that's very difficult to set up because of the way that the aspects work as inventory items. It's going to be annoying to go into Hoda and then go back into Whirlwind, or like go into Hoda, go into Deathblow Upheaval, and then go back into Whirlwind. In the new version of the game, they solve for that, and that's the main reason why things are going to improve a lot. And this is barely like a This is like barely the 1.0 version of the game. Like this version, they fixed resistances. They added a reason to do the open world content other than getting your normal gear, which is to get your Uber gear. And then they never really improved the reason to go into Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons, you're just in there for the high level 925 gear and then the glyph leveling. So, okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good one.